YouTube, ladies and gentlemen, the ban list that rocked the world. In a very rare circumstance, we have had a emergency ban list. Although the terminology of what actually constitutes a emergency ban list isn't actually the important thing here. That's kind of just what we've sort of rolled with for the last 24, 48 hours, etc. They have banned pretty much all of the turn-ending, game-ending cards with one fell swoop. Some would argue that, in fact, from here, there really is nothing much to say.
I wish I could talk about this for even longer, but there's nothing much to say here. There's nothing much to add.
It's like Christmas in October. He is all in. Now, last week you mentioned that it's over, but this week you say we're so back. What changed? Well, mateys and lentil gen, what has happened is potentially one of the greatest, most incredible decisions ever in the history of Konami management for the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. There has been a deliberate and intentional philosophical design choice and shift away from floodgates. I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself because ultimately there is a way to replace these and, you know, use other cards that sort of functionally do the same thing, but there is very little in terms of this consistency to be able to actually replace them like for like. What you will notice in this ban list is that every single one of these cards functionally act in exactly the same way. They are cards designed to take away agency from pretty much both players in how the rest of the duel will unfold. They are there specifically to end the game on that turn so that the opponent just immediately scoops because of the time rules, and they're just not going to bother wasting their time trying to draw the out, of which drawing the out is clearly not really something that you can do under something like a D barrier, is there? That's the most important thing to take away from floodgates, is that they're very RNG and very high variance cards. I need to draw my card there and then, or I just lose. Now, not to spend too much of this video saying I told you so, but over 7 years ago, I've been complaining about this exact same thing for multiple formats. Just so you understand for context how slow this process was to be able to reach this point in time. Floodgates existing have been a plague on the game for as long as I can remember, for as long as I've been making videos. Floodgates in the sense that it is a card that prevents you from playing the game, and especially with the pace and the speed of Yu-Gi-Oh's development over the last couple of years, there really is no outplay here in terms of outgrinding or waiting or setting and biding your time until you get a couple of top decks to be able to try and find the out like you would in maybe an Edison format duel. There is clearly no way to get back into the game in 2025 because games end within turn 3 or 4. This is what we mean by the philosophical design change in this game. After YCS Anaheim, perhaps one of the worst viewing performances of any YCS that I can recall, where multiple top cut duels, multiple Swiss games were ended with instant I win button hand traps like Drone Lockbird, or the Fossil Dyna combo, Mjolnir combo in the top cut. Cards which have been problematic for multiple years now that have essentially shifted in and out of meta relevancy depending on the format and the decks that have been utilizing them. We've had this exact same conversation for many years now, as far back as Anti-Spell Fragrance against Pendulum, Vanity's Emptiness against Necros, Red Reboot against Altergeist. Year after year, format after format, we have been discussing the concept of these I win buttons, lingering card effects that instantly cut off a certain playstyle from being able to continue for the rest of that turn. And so now, before you start demanding all the tier lists and the best deck and what is this and who's going to be on top and all that kind of stuff that we see with the usual regular YouTube slop content that constitutes the modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Metagame, understand that there is nothing that's going to actually change in terms of the best decks. A lot of people, could you believe, I know it's crazy to think, have been complaining about this ban list. Now, there isn't really much to complain about, but you see, Yu-Gi-Oh! Players have this really forcible habit where they're miserable bastards and they just can't be happy about anything. Yes, there are cards that should probably be on here. Bakiri! There are probably certain combos and decks that maybe need to be tuned down just a tiny little bit, but this list is not supposed to shake up the format or reduce the power of these decks. What it's supposed to do is keep the format essentially the same. It's just removing all of the bullshit. We don't have crazy, degenerate, dumb combos in the top tier meta decks anymore that end your turn instantly without any outplay. I mean, yeah, they might be able to put up a ton of interruptions and stuff if you don't draw the right hand trap, but they aren't single-handedly locking you out of the duel for the rest of eternity. And by eternity, we mean one turn, which is an eternity in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, are there positives and negatives to Floodgate? One could argue in any form of discussion, debate that's going to be divisive that, first of all, I will start off and say, you're stupid! Do not justify, do not defend this, do not argue and tell me that you need your fossil dyna to beat the meta sheep, etc., etc. Such Redditor arguments, not even going to entertain that. However, there is some form of logic as to why these floodgates have existed for so long. And I've managed to narrow it down to 2 specific reasons as to why these cards have existed for so long, and maybe in some shape or form will continue to exist for the rest of Yu-Gi-Oh's lifespan. I don't think they're going to be taking away all of them forever. There will still be playable stun decks in that type of sense for a while to come, in my opinion. It's just that the specific top tier combo decks, the meta decks, they won't be doing it to each other and floodgating themselves out of these competitive duels. You'll still be able to play like some silly Thunder King set 5 deck if you really want to. Now, the design intention philosophy for why floodgates have insistently been around for this long is, number one, I believe, and again, I'm not saying I agree with this argument because people in the comment section just don't seem to understand that there is no value judgment being ascribed here. I am just stating a theory and a fact, maybe not a fact, but at least a theory of what exactly the reason is. That is that floodgates exist because it is important to be able to keep casual, not as invested players to have a chance and to stand up against meta decks or anyone else at their locals who have more time, gameplay, and money invested into the game than they do. If you normal summon a fossil dyna and you protect it with all of your back row, etc., and you beat someone with one game, that in itself is a victory for that player, and so it keeps them invested in the game. This is good because from a business perspective, you don't want people to try your game out and instantly quit. Even if they are losing the match, they at least have a chance. The floodgate is getting them a win, a cheap win, but a win nonetheless. Some sort of a carrot on the stick to keep you coming back to your local game store, back to Yu-Gi-Oh, and back to buying product and staying within the ecosystem of the business model that is the trading card game. It is just a deliberate business intention and decision to have players have a chance at actually winning some games they maybe don't really deserve to win in the first place. Because if you are going to have a game that is completely purely skill-based, eventually worse players and weaker players will just give up and quit and no longer spend money on your product. This is a complete theory and my personal, sort of interpretation as to why something like this would exist in a competitive card game. Competition that is primarily defined, in my opinion, fun being a form of gameplay that is dictated by interaction. When you interact with your opponent, when you go back and forth with one another, when you actually activate and chain cards with one another, that is when Yu-Gi-Oh is at its best. Fighting through fields, beating 2 or 3 disruptions, setting up a middle sort of power level board of your own for your opponent to crack back. That is Yu-Gi-Oh at its best. Floodgates do not do that. Logically, one would argue, therefore, why do these cards exist? That's reason number 1. Reason number 2, I think that they've existed for so long because there is a deliberate, specific principle in Yu-Gi-Oh, the anime, the trading card game, that there is this heart of the cards moment. Heart of the cards where you can beat the best player. It is a fundamental principle in this game that they want you to be able to beat someone by luck. It is an important aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh! The trading card game. It is a heart of the cards, rip the best card off the top of your deck, activate a crazy game-winning card there on the spot. Now, we probably don't want it to happen all the time, we probably don't want it to happen consistently, but it should happen enough to be able to create hype moments. Again, I'm not saying I agree with this, but you cannot deny that we have watched YCSs together as a community, for example, on my Twitch channel with thousands of people watching, going absolutely ballistic when like a D-Buyer got flipped by Labyrinth, when they searched out the Eradicator Epidemic virus and took out 6 spells against a Kashtira player in the finals. We have seen these hype, crazy, insane moments happen, and that is a principle that I believe that they want to keep existing in the game. It's not really that particularly interesting when you watch it in hindsight, but in the moment, as a viewer and a spectator, it can be quite exciting. The problem is that when it becomes so prolific and so standard that it is no longer interesting gameplay. I apologize for not being able to get my emergency ban list reaction out in time, but I hope this little small surface level analysis of floodgates, some historical context, introducing the floodgates as a design intention and why they exist and how they are shifting away, at least from a primary gameplay perspective, going forward. So, completely unscripted, a little bit ranty. Apologies if this wasn't as coherent as some of my regular videos, but hope you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know what you thought about the ban list, how you think the game is going to be changing in the future. And I really probably don't have much else to entertain or discuss, to be honest. I mean, what else is there to say? He says at the 15-minute recording mark of the video. All right, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.